Hello, I'm Don Box. I'm an architect on Indigo. I'm over here in building 10 with my good friend.
I'm Chris Anderson, an architect on Avalon.
While Chris arranges the text editor for this demonstration, I'm going to tell you what we're going to do. We're going to look at the developer experience for programming Windows codename Longhorn. We're going to take a look at the out-of-box experience for developers, what the new build environment looks like and feels like. We're going to take a look at Avalon. We're also going to take a look at Indigo. And let's just check in on Chris and see if he's close.
To get started, we're just going to create a new C# file. Don's going to use his favorite text editor here with Emacs. He's going to import some namespaces. All the APIs that we have in Longhorn are exposed through simple managed APIs on the .NET platform. So we're going to include the MS Avalon Windows and MS Avalon.windows.controls namespace. We're going to create a class that derives from Window. Window's the top-level object for all Avalon-based applications. Inside of our main, we're going to create a new application object. And now we want to create an instance of our new Window class. Let's go and set some properties on it. The text property, hello MSDN, and we'll make the window be visible. And finally, we'll just run the application. This is it, the basic Windows application in Longhorn. Very simple, similar API to what you'd see with WinForms or any previous platform. So let's go and compile this. So we'll invoke the C# compiler. We'll include the presentation core, presentation framework, and Windows base DLL. We'll make it via Windows executable and include the C# file we just wrote. Now we can run the application with the magic STA thread. Now we'll compile and run, and we see we get a basic Windows application. Looks very similar to what you've seen before. Now obviously that command line is a little onerous. Within Longhorn, not only do we ship a compiler in the box in the client OS, we also ship a complete build system. We have a new unified build system with Longhorn, Visual Studio, and the SDK. So we're going to create a new proj file, which is the input to the new build system. It's an XML-based syntax that starts with three major types of tags: properties, tasks, and items. In our property group tag, we're going to specify that we want the language to be C#, and we want the target name to be simple.simple. Just simple. It's just simple. For items, we want to include all those C# files. Well, all of the one that we have so far. So we're going to specify we want it to compile, and we're going to include star.C#. The last thing we need to do is import the tasks. So what we're going to do is we're going to import project equals lappy Windows application.target. And this will include all those common tasks that we need to build a Windows application. We're going to specify that we want the default targets to be build. This will just say when we run MS build, just compile. So now we're going to save this, and we can go and now we can run MS build as a command line. The application compiled, so let's take a look, see if it runs. It should be in your bin release directory. Sure enough, it runs. Still a pretty boring application, and we haven't seen any of that new markup that everyone's talking about. Hey Don, I've heard you've seen XML before.
Yes, I have seen XML from time to time.
Excellent. Well, let's start a new file. Let's call it simple.xaml. Get you back in your element here.
Great.
So to start, we're going to put a window tag. This specifies the base type for the class that we're going to create. We need to include some XML namespaces. We're going to start with the default namespace for XAML. We're also going to include the definition namespace. This lets us give directions to the compiler. We're going to specify the class name to be the same class name that we used in the code behind file. We can now move those property sets into this markup file also. Don, find the C# file. So we want to set the text and the visibility. So we can take those lines out of the main function, and we just move those over to the XAML file. So we'll set the text to hello MSDN and the visibility to true. Of course, we need quotes since it's the fun XML. Let's actually make the text say hello MSDN from XAML so that we can all see that it's coming from this new markup file. You should notice that the class name we picked is actually the same as what we had in the code behind file. Normally in C#, if you have two files defining the same class, you're going to get a compile error. In WIDBE, there's a new feature called partial classes. So let's go to the C# file and add the partial keyword to the class definition. Now we actually had forgotten a step. We need a namespace around this, so we're going to use the same namespace as the code behind, as the markup file. Now what's going to happen is when we compile this, both the XAML file and the C# code behind will merge together into a single class definition. So let's tell the project file that we need the XAML file compiled. So we'll open that and add an item group. And here we'll say it's pages. The default compiler in Longhorn understands this new XAML language. So we'll include XAML, and now we can go to the command window and build. And again, it's in bin release, and we can run the application. Hey, we've got XAML. Now, so far that hasn't been a great savings. We have a little bit of XML, and everything declarative is goodness, or so I hear. But let's go in and see what we can really do with this. Underneath the window tag, we can now just start adding new elements. So here we can add a text box and set its width and height. Capital on the properties. And
Old habits die hard.
It's the new world, Don. .NET. Everything starts with a capital. And we want to put a button there. Put some text inside of it.
Great.
Oh, I know that your weight is 200 point, Don, but we'd actually like to set the height of the text box as well.
Thank you. The capitalization threw me for a real loop there.
All right, let's try compiling and see what this looks like.
If only I were only 20 points.
Hey, we have some text and we have a button. So we can type. That's pretty cool so far. Notice the button animates as you click on it, Don?
Yes, I do. I can't believe I wrote that code.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing. Let's add some interactivity, right? It's kind of a boring app. So far, it doesn't do a whole lot when you use it. So let's go to the XAML file and add some code in here. So what we want to do is when you click the button, we're actually going to take the text from the text box and show a message box. So first, let's add an ID. So we were able to add properties in the markup, and so we can add events as well. So let's say click, and give it some method name you can pick. So Don, do you want to see code in a separate file or in this file?
I quite honestly would rather write the code for this handler in the original C# file because my editor set up to do code there really nicely.
All right, so let's go to that file. Remember, since both are merging together at compile time, we can actually put it in either place. So here we can simply type our event handler. Do you remember what you called it?
No. Pushed.
Pushed. So it takes a click event args as the second parameter, and now we can just show a message box with the content of that text. Now you'll notice you can actually use the same ID that was defined in markup.
Like that.
Yeah, that should work great.
Okay.
So let's compile and see how it goes. Uh-oh. Emacs a go-go.
Okay. Building.
Building, building.
Running.
Does it work, though?
Let's find out. Be still my heart.
We have message box.
We have interactivity. The program not only tells me what it thinks, but I can tell it what I'm thinking.
And what are you thinking?
I'm thinking this is so much more powerful than console.writeline.
Wow, and that's coming from you, Don.
Yeah, I know.
Well, okay, so this is great. We've got this simple programming model. We've got this great out-of-the-box developer experience, but I'm sorry, that app still looks pretty lame.
I think so too.
So
even I think so, Chris.
Wow, that's, again, a lot. Let's go in and add some more pizzazz. First, you know, the audience at home probably is having a hard time reading that. Let's see if we can zoom in on that a little bit. Let's add a transform decorator. So Avalon not only supports this great composition model, where you can put anything inside anything, but we can also go in and scale anything up. Everything's based on vectors, so we're just going to be able to zoom this in. Inside of that transform decorator, we're also going to put a text flow panel so that we can see everything inside of there and put it in a nice flow. Avalon also supports a rich layout system, and here we're going to take advantage of it. On the transform decorator, we're also going to say to dock it fill, to have it consume the entire space of the window.
That looks like a reasonable program to me.
That looks pretty, well, of course it does, because there's lots of angle brackets.
Yes.
Let's try running that.
Oh, that's so much better.
Now, notice how the button went below the text box there? Because there wasn't enough space, it actually word wrapped it to the next line.
I'll bet if I make it go wider. Aha!
Yeah.
Look at that.
Well, so we've got some great controls, and we're able to scale it because of that great UI. But let's add some rich text in there. So in the text panel, we can actually...
Chris, what would happen if I did this?
Oh, you can't do that. I don't know. Let's see what it looks like.
That's
Whoa.
much better.
We've always said you're a little off angle, but
Yes.
that's a little excessive.
Okay.
So let's add some text in there. Can you just type some random text in the text panel? Maybe bold something, or we're actually able to, you know, Avalon is the unified document UI and media platform, so we should be able to put all of these things together. I think you misspelled a case on the italic.
Did I? Yeah, I sure did. Thank you, Chris.
I am Don's IntelliSense engine.
Yes, well, I use these primitive tools, so I need help. Cool.
All right, let's build. So the text can wrap, it leaves space for all the controls. We really have a single programming model for all of this kinds of content. You know, I don't know if any of the viewers watching this right now have seen any of the really cool interactive media that we put in this platform before. But what I'd like to do is show off some of the really cool graphics capabilities that we have. So let's add a canvas at the root. And I actually want to, I don't know, Don, have you ever used DirectX to try to play a video?
I must say, of all of the X technologies of the 90s, DirectX is one I never used.
Really?
Yes.
It's based on COM, you know.
There are a few COM interfaces that I have yet to query interface for.
Wow. So what we want to do is just put a video tag. We've taken all the power of your graphics card and video and DirectX and all that and merged it into a single programming model here. So we're just going to set the width and height of this control. We're going to say that we want to stretch the content to fit the window. So we're going to say stretch fill. And we're going to set the source. And I happen to have a video on my C drive in c:/blissclouds.wmv, which is kind of a nice subtle background. And that should be all we need. A couple other things, just a little minor cleanup. We're going to set the width of the transform decorator, and we're going to dock the canvas. Canvas is just like text panel. It's another kind of panel that handles layout. In this case, it's actually an absolute positioning panel. So all we need to do is close that tag out. Wow, that looks beautiful, Don.
Doesn't it?
Yeah.
Great.
So let's try running this, see what this looks like.
It's so beautiful.
Wow. Can you resize the window? I mean, it's actually the video is playing as we're moving and the text is wrapping, and it's all doing it together in a single API.
Yeah, it is very nice, Chris, but it looks kind of, shall I say, harsh?
Yeah, it seems a little hard to see the text. So in Avalon, we have a great alpha compositing engine, so we can actually set opacity on any element. So why don't you set the video to be like 0.7 or 0.5 opacity so we can see through it? I also, I'd like to be able to see through the buttons in the text box.
Okay.
I mean, if we've got opacity, we should use it everywhere.
A little goes a long way, but I'm happy to use it everywhere you want.
Let's set the background on the text box. Now, in Avalon, every place you use color, you can actually specify opacity. So whereas before you do 3 hex values, now you can actually do 4. So that's going to be completely transparent. We want to be able to see it a little bit. So how about 4? Yeah. Let's make the button be kind of transparent and red or something like that. Like, what's your favorite color?
Indigo.
Oh, but of course.
I think that looks like indigo to me.
Yeah, I was just thinking 1100FF. Yeah, definitely.
That was our original code name. Did you know
Really?
that?
Really?
Indigo is much more catchy, though.
Oh. Let's
Great.
Okay, compile. Let's take a look at it. Take a look. See, you can actually see the video playing through the text box as you're typing in it. Can you see it through the button as well? Try pressing the button. Hey, it still works.
You can actually see the cloud, just barely. What can we do to make it more clear, Chris? I want it to be striking.
Okay, so the first 2 numbers make it yeah, that's going to be very clear.
Well, very clear. You're so transparent.
That's what they say about Avalon. It's so transparent.
Yeah.
So look, now you can definitely see it.
I don't know that the home viewers can see that, though, Chris. I really have a feeling it's going to be subtle. This camera, even though it looks like $30,000, $40,000 camera,
Yeah.
I have a feeling we could do better. What do you think?
Let's try again.
What happens if we set it to 1-1? And what happens if we set the foreground color equal to, what do you think? 44000000. Is that right?
Yeah, we can try that.
That's like a very translucent black. Yes.
That would be very translucent black. Yes. Translucent black is a good color. It's in vogue.
Yeah. I have a black beret on order.
Oh yeah. Well, you're doing a great job with the graphic design. I think we're going to put it in charge of the shell. You need a hash in front of that.
A hash.
A pound sign in front of the big number. Oh, sorry. Okay, we're not in Amsterdam. Put that back on, okay?
Good point.
There we go.
I bet that's pretty vivid. Camera woman Erica, what do you think? Is that vivid enough?
Indeed.
Can people see things going back and forth behind there?
They can.
Great.
All right.
Cool.
So now that we've really seen some of this power of Avalon, I mean, the key thing to think about is this is playing video at like 60 frames a second with multiple layers of opacity, custom controls on top of it, and now it hung. The good news is everyone at home knows that we're just releasing Longhorn, just the earliest beta of it. So
it didn't hang, Chris.
the video stopped playing.
We
You know
ran out of
why?
video.
We forgot to set the repeat count.
We forgot to set the repeat count.
All right, so it didn't hang. All is well.
The app is fine.
The app is fine.
The app error, so people don't think we're complete wallies, is, had I said, is it repeat or repeat count?
Repeat count. A big number.
And
Yeah.
of course, we'll never get that far in this tape. We'll run out of tape before we run out of...
Yeah, right. That always works out well. So we can run and leave it playing. But so Don, this really looks kind of, foofy, right?
Yes, it does.
Now, you keep telling me that this new communication stuff, that's really the key thing we should be looking at?
I think so.
Right, okay, so now that we've got this up and running, maybe we should dive in and actually take a look at some of the Indigo features you've been working on so much.
So, we've seen how we were able to build this excellent app, and in fact, I was able to type it in myself. I think it would be only fair if we changed roles now, and I had Chris write a little bit of code. against the technology I work on. So what we're going to do is take this lonely, lonely, lonely application and give it some friends. And those friends, of course, are going to be services that are sitting out in the wild. So the first thing I think we should do is go ahead and quit the app because I'm moved.
I was enthralled by the video, though.
It was nice, yes, but let's keep going.
Okay.
What I'd like to do is actually use Indigo at this point to go out and do some communication. So before we go looking at any XAML, I think we're going to go write a little bit of code. So can you bring up simple.cs? So here's the source file that we had before. And what we're going to do is write a little button handler. So we're going to go add some functionality to our XAML form in a second. So why don't you just clone the signature for pushed and write a new button handler. And what I think we'll do here is, in this case, I think we should go out and talk to my blog. So we'll go ahead and write some code to go post an entry to my weblog, which is out on the internet. We'll go take a look at that in a second too. So what we're going to do now is we're going to use Indigo. So what that means is we need a new using statement up in the top. So we're going to say using system.messageBus, which is the core namespace we're using for the PDC build of Indigo. And inside of our handler, what we're going to do is create a few objects. The first thing we're going to create is a port. And ports are objects that represent locations in network space. And we're going to pass nothing to the constructor, and we're ready to go. And since all we're going to do with this port is send messages, we can go ahead and open it right now. So go ahead and say p.open. So at this point, I've told Indigo I'm alive, I'd like to do some work. Please arrange for it, allow me to send messages out onto the network. To send messages, or to receive messages even, we need channels. And so the kind of channel I'm going to use right now is something called the send channel. So we're going to go ahead and declare a variable of type iSendChannel and say outbound looks fine too. Say p.createSendChannel. And what I need you to do, Chris, is type in a URI here. And the URI is going to be http:// www.got.net.com whack team whack dbox whack service. Perfect. Close that all off. So what I've done is I've given Indigo the address of a service that's sitting out on the network that's waiting for SOAP requests to come in. And I've created the send channel. At this point, we're ready to form a message. Now, my blog is structured. It's got not a totally rich data type, but it's got some interesting goop here.
Your blog, it's not very structured.
You're right. But to get the data into my blog, I need to structure it a little bit.
Okay.
So we need to declare a class somewhere. So can you just go up to right up here to my window would be fine. So go ahead and say public struct item. And we're going to need 3 public fields, all of type string. One called title with a capital T, one called description with a capital D, and the other called content with a capital C. So the SOAP interface to my blog expects a data structure with these 3 pieces of information in it with these names. So I've formulated the data type, and now what we're going to do is create a new message. Actually, I'm sorry.
Message?
You're right. Before we do that, we actually need to make a new item.
Oh, hey, look at that.
So, and we'll fill it in a few seconds because we'll bind it to the form. But before we do that, let's go ahead and finish the Indigo part. So message m equals new message. And message constructors take 2 arguments. The first is an action URI. And since I'm going to be doing creating an entry, the URI for that is http:// www.got.net.whack team whack dbox whack new entry. Cool. So that's a special action URI that the web service we're talking about is expecting. So we know the difference between saying creating a new entry or editing an existing one or deleting it. You can think of it as like the method name. And then the second argument is the body of the SOAP message, which is going to come from item. So if you just pass
just I.
Close, there you go. So we've got a channel, which is outbound. We've got a message, which is M. The last piece of code we need here is outbound.send M.
That's it?
Sweet.
Excellent.
So there's the code we needed to talk to our web service. What we need to do now, of course, is this is a kind of a useless entry. We're going to need to go create some controls in the XAML, because I need the 3 text boxes.
Okay. Hey, I know XAML.
So at this point, I'll let you exercise as much creativity as you'd like. Go ahead and give me 3 text boxes.
Okay.
They don't have to be pretty. They just have to be functional.
They don't have to be pretty. Okay. We'll just put a text box. I'm going to need to access these in code, right?
Yes.
So we'll say the title.
Great.
The description.
Yes.
If I can type today.
And then finally, the content.
Hey.
And do you want to put? You might want to put like a line break or.
Yeah, let's put some line breaks. And we'll put a little label in front of each one.
Oh, you are. Where's your black turtleneck?
I left it at home today.
And your latte and your Macintosh. Look at you.
There we go.
Wonderful.
Does that look great?
Yeah. So we've got the 3 edit controls on the form, and now what we're going to go do is go back and suck them out of the form. So we're going to say I.title equals the title dot text, and yes, you can type it faster than I can say it. So I will let the audience at home just marvel at how productive you are using this fantastic tool, which is an Emacs.
It's not Emacs, Don. This actually, it's, you know.
This is the kind of software people pay for.
This is actually software people pay for.
Wow.
They do. There is still software made that people pay for.
That's excellent.
Okay, so we have that done.
So hold on. We've created the channel. We've populated the item. We've created a message around the item. We've done the send. Why don't you go ahead and compile it? So do an MS build.
Okay.
Did that compile successfully?
That compiled successfully.
Oh my God, you're so good.
First try. That's pretty amazing.
Why don't you go ahead and run the app?
We have our fabulous text box.
Oh, look at that. With the scaling, I'm just...
It's beautiful, isn't it?
Yes.
It is.
So why don't you type something in?
Okay. We're on MSDN TV, right?
Yes.
Whenever I'm on TV, I always say, "Hi, Mom." And what would you like to say? Since it's your blog, you have to tell me what the content is.
Boy, I don't know. What do you think?
I think you should say, how about let's just tell them what we're doing right now. So Erica is
in my office.
It is your office.
It is my office, and this is my blog, so it'd be appropriate to be written in my voice.
We should write it in your voice. Hey, when are we going to be, when's this on?
I think it's on next week, Chris.
Okay. Next week.
Excellent.
Fabulous.
So before you do anything... Oh,
we didn't put a button on here.
We didn't put a button on here.
Okay, first rule of blog entries is make a way to do a post. So we're going to shut this down.
Oh, man.
You know, I think I have to turn in my black beret now.
Yes.
And let's just put a button in. Button. And we'll say, I think I called it another pushed. And we'll say submit. And let's go back to this code behind. And actually, we call it another push. So I'll actually change it here. That'll be easier. So we'll save this. And now let's go. Hey, at least we are highly likely that it's going to compile.
Yes.
Hey, we got a submit button this time.
Cool.
Should I type the same stuff in?
Yeah, MSDN TV, Hi Mom, whatever. And then, I don't know, I'm on TV with Chris next week. And before you hit submit, let's go take a look at my blog.
Okay. I happen to have it up here.
So
I visit there often.
Cool.
Okay.
Is it working? Good.
It is working.
We have not put our new entry on there yet.
We have not.
So why don't you go ahead and...
Should I hit submit?
Yes.
Okay. It's thinking.
And now let's take a look and see if it worked. So why don't you go ahead and Alt-tab back to my blog and hit the refresh button.
Hey.
Ladies and gentlemen. So, your program is no longer as lonely as it was once
I feel
before.
like I have more friends now.
Yeah, so we saw how it was pretty straightforward to make a web service call to, my blog engine, which is sitting somewhere over, I don't know, a couple miles away from here, actually, where the hosting happens. Why don't we go ahead and now take a look at how we can use Indigo to make your program richer by connecting to things that aren't quite so far away. So what I'd like to do is add some interactivity to my app, but use services to do the integration. So I think what we should do now is create a new Visual Basic project, which will do some fancy Avalon stuff.
Cool.
So can you, however you write Visual Basic programs, Chris?
You know how to write Visual Basic programs, don't you?
Yes, Visual Basic programmers use Visual Basic.
Yeah. Or Visual Studio.
Visual Studio. They're in no way conflicted.
No.
Yes. They're a very pragmatic lot. Wonderful. So what we're going to do is create, what do you call those things over on the side, Chris?
Over here?
A tile.
Yes, a tile.
So we're going to lay some tile. Would that be an appropriate way to characterize what we're about to do?
That would be
Is that what you guys call it in Avalon?
We don't actually call it that in Avalon, but
we will now.
We will now, yes. So should we call this the indigo tile?
Yeah.
All right.
So we've got some Visual Basic code. What I want to do is actually just go ahead and
it's opening a lot of files.
oh my goodness, look at this, Chris.
This is Visual Studio. Did you see how much code it just generated for you?
That's much more productive than I was before.
Yes.
Cool.
So can I show you this works first?
Yes.
Okay. So let's. So here we have this new little project type we have, and so I'm just gonna say, hello Dawn. We'll make this so you can actually see it. You notice we're getting all the fun statement completion here, and now we will make the solution.
Okay.
Because in Visual Basic you don't build, you make.
You make.
You make. So it succeeded. So now if we go over here, and if you notice I can right click on the tile.
Can you? And where's it? Indigo tile. Wow, look at that.
The indigo tile.
That looks like something I would have designed graphically. Nice and gaudy.
It is nice and gaudy, but I'm sure the viewers at home can actually see it, though. That's a nice thing.
Good point. So why don't we go ahead now and turn this little tile program that you just wrote, actually unload it. Why don't we go ahead and turn it into a web service?
Do you think I can do that?
I have a feeling you can.
Wow.
So we're going to need some code back over on the other side. And once again, we're going to need to bring in system.messageBus and no semicolon.
No semicolon.
Actually, did you know, can you go back up there? Visual Basic allows semicolons if you put in the special semicolon prefix character, which is right there. Check that out.
Oh, hey, look at that.
Yeah.
I like that. Should I add that at the end of all my lines?
You can do that as much as you like.
Okay, we'll do that a different day, though.
So what we're going to need to do now is write the service code that's actually going to process the request.
Okay.
So why don't we, let's see, we're going to need to write a new class.
Okay.
So write a new class.
Class.
And we're going to call this MyService. And it's going to extend.
Inherit, you mean?
Yes. It's going to inherit.
I'm sorry, VB Intelligence got me there.
Okay. It inherits from sync message handler. And there's your service method right there. So what we're going to do is this method will be called whenever a message comes into our service. And so what we need to do here is munge the text over in our toolbar based on the message content. And I think, because I actually want to see this work extremely quickly, we're just going to go ahead and pass a string as the message content.
Okay.
So why don't you go ahead and declare yourself a string variable. And to initialize it, we're going to say, let's see, message is the message. So we say message.content.getObject, type of, I think it's C type, or get type, of string, yeah. And do you need, we need to assign that to S.
We want to assign it to S, so we're going to use C type.
There we go.
I'll educate you on VB here a little bit. We can use the C type and get it.
You know,
there we go.
You know so much. Well, of course, you've worked here much longer than I have.
You know, you're still new.
Yes, thanks. And now all we need to do is the Avalon magic to wire it up to your tile.
Okay.
Now, here's the issue, and I'll ask you, when we wire this thing up as a service, this process message routine is going to be called on an arbitrary thread.
So this is not going to come in on my UI thread?
This is not going to come in on the UI thread, which is being used by Avalon to show
whatever's happening in the UI.
So you know Avalon's not as STA, it's not as single-threaded as Win32 used to be, right?
Well, that's good.
Yeah, we have what we call a rental model, basically. You have multiple contexts that can run. But we still need to get the interaction onto the right context. So I'm going to use the context associated with it. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to grab the tile. So I'm just going to say the tile as my tile. So we'll use that to get at the context.
Okay.
So I think I made one minor error here. This should actually be the tile foreground. So now we should be able to get at the context right here.
Okay.
So we'll say the tile.context and begin invoke. And what we need to pass is a UI context operation delegate.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah. So
That was on the tip of my tongue.
that was on mine. Luckily in VB, I believe we can just say address of, and we'll give it the name of our function. So in this case, we're going to create a function called callback, and we're going to pass it that string.
Okay.
So it's giving me an error because I haven't defined the function. So we'll say function callback, and their signature is object as object.
Now, this is one of the rare occasions where, had we been using C#, we could have used anonymous delegates.
We could have used anonymous delegates, but you can see even in VB, I didn't have to figure out that nasty name of that delegate. I can just use the address of, and it automatically figures out the right
Oh,
type.
right. And that was actually available from V1.
That is.
So in this respect, Visual Basic was visionary.
Visual Basic was visionary.
Yes.
So now we need to set the text in
Yes,
the
yes,
tile
yes, yes.
foreground. So I'm going to switch over to the XAML file here,
Okay.
and I need to specify an ID on the simple text. So we'll say it is the text. Oh, I'm big into the today. Have you noticed
I've
that?
noticed that.
Yeah. So we'll go to the background here and say the tile dot the text dot text equals convert the object to a string.
Great.
And now if we make the solution,
Any reason why you're getting blue squigglies there?
it is protected. So what I'm going to do, I actually want access to that field from inside of this outer class. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do something that's kind of uncommon in VB. What I'm going to do is I'm going to make an inner class, a nested class.
Okay.
So I'm just going to drag this code into the body of my other class, and now you can see the blue squigglies go away.
Oh, got it.
So this is one of those cases where I think a lot of VB people think that the language doesn't support some of these advanced object-oriented constructs, but really it has all the power of C#.
Great. So is it building?
It is building.
So we've gone to the trouble of writing the service code, which is my service. What we haven't done is actually wire it up and let Indigo know that we're here and be willing to be used. So we need to go to some place like a constructor or some onload thing.
How about the constructor, the subnew?
The constructor would be a perfectly wonderful place to do this.
Excellent.
So we already brought in Indigo's namespace, so what we need to do is make another port. And this time what we're going to do is, when we call the constructor, so p equals new port, we're actually going to give it a URI that it will be listening on. So go ahead and say new URI. Let's go ahead and say http:// localhost whack, let's see, Indigo tile. So this is just a machine local identifier.
Now, do I have to use HTTP here?
You don't, but
We will for now.
this way I can change this thing when I'm not sitting at this machine.
Excellent.
Maybe we should just try to build it, Chris.
All right, let's give that a shot.
So we're going to need a server. So we say DMS is new my service. And we're going to wire that up to the receive channel by saying p.receive channel dot handler equals s. And you're probably also going to want to wire up the property that gives you the back pointer to yourself. So s dot the tile equals me. And that looks
right?
good. Yeah, and all we have to do now is an open at the end of all this. So p.open, capital O. And I believe that's it. So let's try and build.
Succeeded.
Wonderful.
0 build errors.
Cool. So let's go ahead and go back to our client program, which you wrote in C#. And let's take this code here. And can you use conditional compilation? Let's get rid of, or put an if statement around. So everything's going to look the same.
So we want to get rid of this?
Yeah. We don't need all that item stuff anymore. I just want to take this existing code that we just wrote, since this is just a quick demo,
Okay.
and show how to send a message to that service. So why don't you go ahead and...
So I should replace the item now with our string? Since
Yeah,
that's the body?
exactly. Just pass a string, since that's what we're expecting on the other side.
Hi, Don.
Great. And we're going to need to change this create send channel argument to give it our new URI.
Okay. So we're not going to try to post this string to your blog then.
No, this is going to go to that tile, which is at localhost whack indigo tile. Cool.
Can I still use that same URI for the action?
Well, as it turns out, we didn't look at the action URI in our code, so we're pretty much treating every message as an opportunity to change that text. So I'm happy to leave that there.
Okay.
So that looks good. Why don't you go ahead and build this?
Dare we try running?
Sure.
I'm going to put the tile up on the bar really quick. Hello, Don.
And we're going to change it to hi, Don. Let's be very clear.
So running. So I don't need to fill in these text boxes anymore.
We're not looking at them anymore.
I'm going to hit submit.
Yes.
And it changed.
My goodness.
So so to be clear, that went out on the internet, back to my machine, into the sidebar tile, across threads, into Avalon, and updated the text.
Yeah, absolutely. And I could take this client program and run it on any box, and depending on how I've got my security configured, I will or will not be able to modify that text. Now, if I never, ever, ever wanted this to work anywhere else but on this box, which is a completely reasonable expectation, what we would have done is gone back to the code and changed the URI scheme to no longer be http:/, but rather ms.soap.xproc, and it would have worked.
Okay, that's good to know. Good to know.
So we've just written a bunch of code, and what we saw while we wrote that code was that Longhorn ships with excellent support for doing declarative programming as well as imperative programming. We saw that not only does the C# and VB compiler ship with the operating system, but we also get a rich build environment in the form of MS-build, and we saw the .proj files. We also saw XAML, which is a declarative way to define the structure of my application independent of the logic of the application.
You know, we also got to see how great Avalon and Indigo work well together.
We sure did, Chris.
We did.
Yeah, that was nice.
So Longhorn, better together.
Better together.
Well, that was great. We've seen Avalon and Indigo working better together, as we just saw. And in the spirit of getting better together, I've gotten my hair cleaned up, and we're now ready to dive into the third pillar of Longhorn. That would, of course, be WinFS, the great new integrated storage platform. So let's dive into WinFS. What I've got is a basic project here with just an empty window. And we can see the window tag here, the standard XML namespaces for XAML. And what we're going to do is create a little application that allows me to browse the files on my local hard drive and select documents that were authored by somebody. So the first thing we want to do is create our UI that lets me say who I want to search for. So I'm going to start with a transform decorator so that we can all see this at home. Let's say transform scale to 2. And we want to dock this. And now inside of here, we can just create our text panel. And we're going to say person and put a text box with an ID. Call this person. Oddly enough, we'll keep with the naming convention. And we'll set its width to be 2.5 inches and height to be 20 point. And then we'll put a button that inside of it says pick. So now we've got our basic application, and we should be able to run and see what this looks like. One would have thought we would have run and see what that looked like. The grand rule of XML, and if Don were here, would tell us, always close your tags. So now we can go in, and we can see our text box and our person. Of course, pick doesn't do a whole lot, so let's fix this, because right now we can type, fictional people like, anyway, we won't pick somebody. So now we're going to wire up this pick. So the first thing we're going to do is go to the button here, and we'll add a click handler for pick. And if you remember earlier, we can just go to our code behind file and put a method and the signature for all of you watching at home, object sender, click event args e. So now what we want to do is use one of these new built-in controls that allow us to, in the same way you can select files, we can now select people. People being a built-in concept in Longhorn. So we can say contact picker dialog, and we want to specify the property request dot property type to be contact property type dot contact. Now the contact picker is actually a really complex control that allows you to select lots of attributes about people. You can actually select addresses, multiple email names, you can deal with phone numbers. In this case, we're just going to get the whole contact back. So now we're just going to show this, just like you would standard dialogues in Avalon. Dialog result.ok. And if we get that, we're just going to go and set the person.text equal to the selected contact dot display name dot value. And we'll build. And I think. All right, I think I know what the problem is here. The result actually comes back, and I need to get the contact, because remember the contact picker can select a lot of different kinds of data. And so now if we go and we do a build, we'll see it still failed because it's also plural. So now we'll just run, and all is well. Application comes up, and now if we click pick, we can actually see this people picker, this contact picker dialog comes up. And here I can select, and I can use corporate directory accounts, I can use local machine accounts, or just my contacts that I would keep. And so in this case, I'll look for stuff that I authored. So I'll type Chris Anderson, and we'll search. And we can see this is me. So I'll select that and do OK. And we can see that my name got put in there. It's successfully got the text out of here. So now that we've got a person, let's go and search for all the documents on the local machine. So we're going to close this down, and we'll start with our query. So the first thing, we want to have a list box that we can put the results in. So I'm just going to put a line break, and we'll drop in a list box, give it an ID, result list, and inside of that we'll put just a list item for a placeholder for right now. So item 1, and remembering to close my tags, and beneath that we'll put a button that says search. Alright, so we've got our basic UI. Let's wire the button up to a method to actually do some work. So we'll say click equals search, and now we'll go back to our code behind file. So now that we've got our person in that text box, we can just do our search here by saying same signature, object sender, click event args e. And we're going to import a few more namespaces. Let's go here to the top of the file, and we're going to import the storage namespace and storage.schemas, actually storage.core. And what this is, the system storage namespace is a root namespace that WinFS uses. So now we can go in here and we'll be able to use all of the features in WinFS. So we're going to start with clearing out the current list of items. We'll say result list.items.clear. We'll create an item context. Item context is kind of the root object in WinFS. So this is going to be what we're going to do all of our queries against. And now I can just really simply do a for each, and I'm going to do for each document in find all type of document. And you can really see here how this entire system is integrated deeply with the .NET programming model. Document as well as people is a first-class object. I can just query over all of these, and then I'm going to go and I'm going to look at each name and we'll add that to our list box. Now the reason WinFS has a very generic schema mechanism, so in this case it actually supports the ability for items to even have more than one name, or you might have a display name you could use, but you'd also have a programmatic name. In this case we're just going to use the first name we encounter and put that in. And so now we'll build and run. And it didn't quite take, so we need to go look at the errors. Apparently we're not going to get a successful build in without at least one error. And in this case it's even more silly error in the fact that we have to have balanced parentheses. There we go. Now we've got our application. We can see that first dummy item in there and the search button. Now since we haven't added any filter based upon the name, for now we're just going to press the search button and let it find all the items. So here we can actually see a bunch of my talks that I'm working on for my the PDC that just happened a while ago. I guess since you're watching this after the PDC, these are old now. And so now we're going to add the filter logic. So let's go through and close that down. And all we need to do here inside this for each loop, we're just going to go and look at the author of the document. So here we're going to say if the author of the document, so we're going to, since every document can of course have multiple authors, we're going to look at the first one and look at the display name. So if the person has the same name as the what's in the text box, then we'll do this logic. So we'll just move this in, and now we've filtered on all that data. Now run, and here we'll type Chris Anderson, and if we search, we see all of my documents came up, because oddly I only have documents I've authored on my machine, which is, But here if we see, let's see what Don's been working on, and we search for him. Don, alas, did nothing before the PDC. So there we've seen how you can integrate people and documents and do rich queries across WinFS very fast in a performant way, deeply integrated with the entire platform.